So to summarize where we're at and where we're headed in the second chapter, the first chapter introduced the story of the Jews under oppression from the wicked king Antiochus Epiphanes. And you were introduced to Mattathias, who's the Jewish priest who called the people to rebel when they were told to disobey God. In this second chapter, we're going to be introduced to his son, because Mattathias has passed away. He passes on the rulership, the command of the armies of the Lord to his son Judas Maccabeus, or Judas Maccabeus. His name means the hammer, and he has this reputation of being an awesome military leader. As we get into this second chapter, the whole theme of spiritual warfare will open up. We've already seen it in the first chapter. But here, as we watch Judas Maccabeus and his brothers battle the wicked authorities and begin to try to obey the Lord under those difficult circumstances, we see something that's very valuable for us in understanding the New Testament. And that is how the Jews of this day interpreted Scripture. Mattathias looked back on Scripture just as Judas did, his son, and they saw the courage and the faith of Moses and Joshua. And they said, if God met them and delivered them from their oppressors in that day, God will do the same thing for us. And so what you'll see in chapter 2, to an extent like chapter 1, is this rather startling theme of literal warfare and how they grounded that in being obedient to the Lord. Something that takes place in chapter 1 that I didn't refer to before is the profaning of the sanctuary, the holy place of the Lord, when the wicked ruler Antiochus Epiphanes brings the thing that will become known later as the abomination that causes desolation. We read that phrase in Mark's gospel. Jesus refers to it. We read about it in the book of Daniel. It really speaks of a time when the oppressive authorities try to wipe out the obedience to God and the worship of God. And so Judas's response of obedience and faith is to say the Lord will meet us. And he goes in and he recaptures the sanctuary, the holy place of God. He retakes it for the Lord. And the battle unfolds with Judas being really a kind of a deliverer, really a kind of a Messiah-like figure who delivers the Jews. Now, for Christians living in a later age, it seems either inconceivable or is it appropriate? Would Jesus ever approve of taking up swords and attacking people? We don't think so. But it is certainly something that happened if we go back to the Exodus, if we go back to the period of the Judges, the conquest of the Holy Land. But there are many years between then and now, and the Jews of Mattathias' day and Judas Maccabeus' day, the Maccabees as they were known collectively, they certainly did have to face this. They had to own this lesson in the flesh, so to speak. They had to conduct this warfare, or at least they did conduct the warfare in this way. To wrap up this second chapter, I would just emphasize what might seem like a peculiar notion that this is about holiness or guarding God's holiness. Christians today don't take up arms. We war not against flesh and blood. It's a progressive revelation, and God's been revealing progressively more and more about who he is. And in the New Testament, we know that we war not against flesh and blood. But in the background is the story of the Maccabees when they still, for whatever purpose, still took up arms against their enemies. But they didn't do it for self-serving purposes. As you read chapter 2, pick up on the theme that they were doing this in order to guard the sanctuary, to guard God's holiness. Their warfare was zealous. And Judas never let down in protecting the people of God, certainly, but especially to guard God's holiness. That's what the temple is about. That's what God's people are about. They represent God meeting humanity and the holiness of God, existing in and around and living and dwelling with God's people.